For thousands of years, the galaxy had been under the shadow of one name, the Dravari Dominion. Their ships, forged from black metal and humming with strange energy, traveled faster than light and burned brighter than suns. Their banners flew over countless worlds, from frozen planets on the rim to lush gardens in the galactic core. Every species knew their authority. Every star seemed to whisper their power. The Dravari believed they were eternal. Their leaders declared themselves chosen by destiny, their fleets invincible and their empire unbreakable. When they moved into a new system, the same ritual always followed. They sent a single ship, a giant vessel bristling with weapons, to orbit above the chosen planet. The people below would look up and see their sky filled with shadows. Then came the message, broadcast on every frequency: submit or be erased. Most civilizations did not resist. They had heard the stories. They knew what the Dominion had done to the others who had fought back. Whole planets burned into glass, cities turned to rubble, populations reduced to whispers of memory. Survival meant obedience, and so one after another species bent the knee. The Dravari grew arrogant. In their minds, they were the natural rulers of the stars. They looked at other species as children or insects, things to control or crush. To them, humanity was barely worth mentioning. Earth had been discovered centuries earlier by a Dominion scout ship. Reports were made, a small noisy species with developing technology, divided governments, and fragile bodies. Interesting perhaps, but no threat. The Dravari dismissed them. Earth was placed on a long list of primitive worlds not yet worth conquering. The decision was almost laughable to the Dominion. Why waste resources on such a small planet? Why bother to dominate creatures who would one day come crawling on their own? And so humanity was ignored. For generations, the Dominion expanded elsewhere. They fought wars with distant rivals, absorbed new territories, and celebrated their supremacy. But in the silence of their arrogance, they failed to notice something important. Humanity was changing. On Earth and its colonies, humans advanced with stubborn determination. They discovered new ways to travel, to communicate, to build. Unlike other species, humans did not remain divided forever. Slowly, painfully, and often with conflict, they learned to unify when the need was great. Their history was filled with wars, but also with survival. Their story was one of resilience. When humans looked up at the stars, they did not see rulers. They saw frontiers. By the time the Dominion remembered humanity, the species was no longer primitive. Far across the galaxy, in the grand halls of the Dominion capital, the ruling council gathered. They were tall creatures, their skin glimmering like polished stone, their eyes sharp as blades. Their armor was ceremonial, but every piece carried the weight of history. They sat in a circle of thrones, each representing the ancient houses that had once fought for dominance before uniting into a single empire. High Chancellor Vorak, the eldest among them, raised his voice. "There is unrest," he declared. "The lesser species grow restless. Some speak of rebellion. They whisper that our rule weakens." The chamber stirred with unease. For centuries, the Dominion had known nothing but victory. But lately, cracks had begun to appear. Small uprisings, hidden resistance cells, fleets delayed by sabotage. "We must remind them," said another counselor, her voice sharp. "We must show the galaxy that no challenge can stand before us." Vorak nodded slowly. His gaze drifted to a glowing display of star maps. Entire sectors glimmered under the Dominion's control. Yet one corner of the map drew his attention, a cluster of human-held systems. A minor territory, nothing compared to the riches of the core. "Humans," he muttered. "They expand quickly." Too quickly. The others followed his gaze. They laughed at first. Humans were still young, still small compared to the vastness of the Dominion, but Vorak was not convinced. "Fire begins with a spark," he warned. "Better to crush it before it spreads." And so the decision was made. The Dominion would extend its shadow toward humanity. The first sign came not as a battle, but as a demand. On the colony world of GalacticPrime, the people awoke to find the sky filled with black ships. The Dominion's voice echoed through every device, every station, every broadcast: "Submit or be erased." The message was cold, calculated, and familiar to countless worlds before. The Dravari expected surrender within hours, but GalacticPrime did not surrender. Its leaders met in secret. They were afraid, yes, but they also carried something rare: stubborn courage. They sent a reply that shocked even themselves: "We will not bow." It was the first open defiance humanity had ever made against the Dominion. The Dravari were amused at first. To them, it was a child's tantrum. They prepared to destroy the colony as a warning. Their fleets gathered, their weapons charged, their commanders certain of quick victory. But when the attack began, something unexpected happened. The human defense forces fought back not with equal strength but with desperate ingenuity. Small corvettes darted between massive warships targeting weak points the Dominion had overlooked. Pilots used unconventional maneuvers, risking everything to stall the enemy. Ground forces sabotaged landing craft before they could deploy. Arden Prime burned, but it did not fall. For every ship the Dominion destroyed, another human vessel struck back in ways they had never predicted. For every squad crushed under superior weapons, others found ways to sabotage fuel lines, blind sensors, or jam communications. The Dravari were forced to retreat, not defeated, but delayed. To them, it was an embarrassment. To humanity, it was a miracle. Word spread quickly. Across human colonies, the story of Arden Prime became legend. For the first time in history, the unstoppable Dominion had been resisted. On Earth, leaders gathered in underground chambers, away from the eyes of the Dominion. Old flags were set aside and ancient rivalries forgotten. Humanity faced a choice: surrender to fear or stand together. The decision was not easy. Many argued that resistance was foolish. How could one species stand against an empire that ruled the stars? But others reminded them of history, how humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. "We do not survive by surrender," one voice declared. "We survive by defiance," the council voted. Humanity would not submit. Meanwhile, in the vastness of space, whispers spread among other enslaved species. The news of Arden Prime reached them like a spark in dry grass. If humans could resist, perhaps others could too. The Dominion, once unchallenged, now faced something they had not expected. Not an equal fleet. Not superior technology, but a refusal to kneel. And so, the first chapter of a greater conflict began. The Dravari believed humanity was weak. They believed one world's defiance was a small matter, something to be crushed and forgotten. But deep in human space, plans were already being made. Factories roared to life. Engineers worked in secret. Scientists pored over blueprints of something the galaxy had never seen before. A weapon not built for conquest, but for survival. A weapon that would one day shake the stars. A battleship. The smoke of Arden Prime still hung in the sky when the first ships limped back to Earth. Their hulls were torn, their engines barely alive, and their crews weary, but their voices carried something new. Hope. For the first time in memory, the Dravari Dominion had not claimed instant victory. For the first time, the so-called rulers of the stars had been forced to pull back. Humanity had survived, though at a terrible cost. The people of Earth and its colonies listened to the survivors' stories. They heard of pilots who rammed their ships into enemy carriers, of engineers who rewired broken systems mid-battle, of soldiers who stood against weapons that should have erased them instantly. Arden Prime was scarred but not broken. The message was clear. The Dominion could bleed. On the Dominion's capital world, the news was received with anger and disbelief. High Chancellor Vorak slammed his clawed hand against the table of the ruling council. "How?" he demanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Could a single colony delay the full might of the Dominion fleet?" His advisors lowered their heads. The truth was bitter. The humans had fought in ways the Dominion had not predicted. They had no fear of sacrifice, no respect for the strict rules of battle. One commander finally spoke. "They do not fight with order. They fight with chaos." Vorak's eyes narrowed. "Chaos is weakness." "Perhaps," the commander admitted. "But against chaos, our order slows. Our systems were not prepared for their unpredictability." The council murmured uneasily. It was not just a failure of strength, it was a failure of perception. They had underestimated humanity. Vorak silenced them with a gesture. "Then we will remind the galaxy who rules. Send a fleet, not a token force. A fleet large enough to burn their worlds to ash. Let no doubt remain." The chamber echoed with agreement. The Dominion would strike again, this time with overwhelming fire. Back on Earth, the human council gathered in a hidden chamber beneath the United Fleet headquarters. Maps and holograms flickered above the long table. Reports poured in from colonies. Ships destroyed, trade disrupted, fear spreading. Yet amid the fear there was also unity. For the first time in centuries, Earth's leaders spoke not as rivals, but as one. Admiral Sarah Kepler, her uniform worn and her face marked with exhaustion, stood before them. "The Dominion will not forget Arden Prime," she said. "They will come again, and they will come stronger." The council members exchanged grim looks. "Can we stop them?" One asked quietly. Kepler's voice was steady. "Not with what we have now. Their fleets outnumber ours 10-1. Their ships are larger, faster, and more powerful. But we do not need to match them. We only need to survive them." She tapped a control on the table, and a new image appeared. The outline of a ship, massive and unfinished, hidden in a secret shipyard orbiting Jupiter. "This is Project Valiant," Kepler explained. "Our answer to the Dominion." The council leaned forward. The design was unlike anything humanity had built before. Longer than a city, with armor layers thicker than mountains, the battleship was a gamble of resources and time. One counselor frowned. "It looks impossible." "Perhaps," Kepler admitted, "but so did surviving Arden Prime." Silence fell. Then slowly heads nodded. Humanity would take the gamble. While the Valiant's construction began in secret, humanity continued to resist with whatever means it had. Small fleets patrolled the borders. Colonists trained with weapons. Engineers built hidden defenses, and smugglers carried supplies through dangerous space. The Dominion expected humanity to surrender quickly. Instead, they found themselves facing constant irritation. On the mining world of Calros, human workers overloaded their own equipment to cause explosions when Dominion troops landed. On the icy colony of Norvain, farmers hid entire settlements beneath frozen lakes to survive occupation. On transport routes, small human frigates launched sudden ambushes, disabling larger ships before vanishing into asteroid fields. The Dominion won battles, yes, but never easily. Every victory came with delay, damage, or loss. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy saw the Dominion stumble. Among enslaved species, whispers grew louder. In the marketplaces of conquered worlds, in the minds of distant moons, in the shadows of forgotten cities, voices spread the tale: the humans fight back. It was not just the fact of resistance that inspired them, but the way humanity fought. Others had resisted before, but their struggles had been brief, predictable, and crushed. Humanity was different. They refused to fight by the rules the Dominion expected. They refused to surrender even when defeat seemed certain. To the oppressed, humanity became a symbol. If humans could resist, maybe anyone could. Meanwhile, the Dominion prepared its counterstrike. In the shipyards of the core, vast fleets assembled, dreadnoughts larger than mountains, cruisers bristling with weapons, swarms of smaller escorts. Their numbers darkened the skies as they gathered. Vorak stood before them, his voice carried across the fleet. "The galaxy forgets who rules the stars. Let us remind them. Burn the humans' worlds, shatter their fleets, show them the price of defiance." The Dominion forces roared in approval, their banners unfurled. Engines blazed. The fleet set course for human space. On Earth, alarms rang as the Dominion advance was detected. Humanity's fleet scrambled to prepare. Civilian ships were evacuated. Industries shifted to war production, and every capable pilot was called into service. Admiral Kepler stood aboard the flagship Resolute, watching the stars. Her hands clenched behind her back as reports came in. "They outnumber us," her officer said quietly. 5 fleets, maybe more." Kepler did not flinch. "Then we fight with what we have." The officer hesitated. "And if what we have is not enough?" Kepler turned to him. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was steel. "Then we show them what it means to be human." The first clashes came at the edge of human space. Dominion ships entered the Vera system expecting a quick sweep. Instead, they found mines hidden among the asteroids, automated drones attacking from unexpected angles, and human ships darting in and out like hunters in a storm. The Dominion won, but slowly. Their commanders grew frustrated. The humans did not fight like any species they had conquered before. By the time the Dominion reached deeper into human space, they had already lost time, fuel, and ships. And still humanity refused to kneel. In the shipyard above Jupiter, the skeleton of the Valiant grew. Engineers worked day and night, their hands blistered, their eyes strained, but their spirits burning. They knew what was coming. Every bolt they fastened, every panel they welded, every circuit they connected was done with one thought: survival. The Valiant was not just a ship. It was a promise that humanity would not vanish quietly into history. As Dominion fleets pressed harder, the galaxy began to watch more closely. Neutral species, long afraid of the Dominion, now observed humanity with growing respect. Could this small, fragile species truly stand against the rulers of the stars? In the hidden corners of the galaxy, rebellion stirred, and in the heart of human space, the spark of defiance grew brighter. The Dominion had ruled the stars for centuries. They had faced no equal, no challenge, no threat that lasted. But now, for the first time, their certainty trembled, because the humans did not see them as gods. The humans saw them as conquerors, and conquerors could fall. The Dominion fleets pressed deeper into human space. Planet after planet trembled beneath their advance. Skies turned red as their dreadnoughts burned atmospheres, and their carriers released swarms of smaller ships. To many, it seemed the end of humanity was near. Yet for every world they reached, resistance awaited them. Human fighters darted through asteroid belts. Civilian freighters disguised themselves as warships, buying precious minutes of delay. Colonists sabotaged supply routes, leaving Dominion fleets hungry and short of fuel. The Dravari commanders grew frustrated. Victory was still theirs, but never as swift as they demanded. For the first time in centuries, their reports to the High Chancellor carried not triumph but irritation, and still, they had no idea of the storm waiting for them. Above Jupiter, the secret shipyard blazed with light. The HSS Valiant was almost complete. It hung in orbit like a metal giant, dwarfing the ships around it. Workers moved along its surface in small crafts, welding, sealing, and attaching the last of its armor plates. Inside, engineers tested power systems, weapons arrays, and shielding units. The Valiant was unlike any vessel humanity had ever built. It was not just larger, it was smarter, stronger, and built with lessons learned from every painful defeat humanity had suffered. Unlike Dominion ships, which relied on centuries of tradition, the Valiant was designed for survival. Every corridor had backups. Every system could reroute if damaged. Every weapon could serve 2 or 3 purposes if another failed. It was a ship designed by necessity, not pride. And in that difference lay its strength. Admiral Sarah Kepler stood on the observation deck gazing at the battleship. Her uniform was wrinkled, her hair tied back hastily, but her eyes held unshakable focus. She had commanded fleets for decades, yet never had she seen something like this. "Is it ready?" she asked quietly. Chief Engineer Malik, his hands blackened from days of work, gave a tired smile. "It will fly, Admiral. It will fight." "But she's untested," Kepler nodded. "So are we." For a long moment she said nothing, simply watching as the final panels were sealed. Then she whispered almost to herself, "The galaxy thinks humanity is weak. Let them see how wrong they are." The call came sooner than expected. Scouts reported a massive Dominion fleet entering the Valoron system, a short jump from Earth itself. Dozens of dreadnoughts, hundreds of cruisers, and countless escorts. Their banners glowed with the mark of the Dominion. The order was clear. Earth would fall. Panic spread across the colonies. Civilian ships fled toward hidden refuges. Defense fleets scrambled to intercept. Messages flooded the council chambers. "Where is the Valiant? Is it ready?" Kepler stood aboard the flagship resolute, her jaw set. "Launch her!" she commanded. When the Valiant emerged from the shipyard, even veteran captains fell silent. The battleship moved slowly, like a mountain drifting through the void, but every detail of its design radiated strength. Its armor gleamed with layered plating. Its engines glowed with a steady, defiant light. Along its flanks, weapons bristled. Rail cannons, missile pods, energy turrets, and strange new systems that even the crew did not fully understand. The Valiant was not beautiful. It was not graceful, but it was alive with purpose. Across the fleet, a single message spread. The Valiant sails. The Dominion fleet entered Valoron expecting easy prey. Their commanders had grown tired of these delaying battles. They believed Earth would fall as so many other worlds had before. Then their sensors caught it. One ship, one battleship, massive and defiant, waiting for them in the emptiness between stars. At first they laughed. One ship dares to stand against us? But laughter soon turned to unease. The Valiant was larger than they expected, its design unfamiliar, its readings strange. And most of all, it did not retreat. It waited. Inside the Valiant, the crew held their breath. Pilots strapped into their stations. Engineers monitored glowing consoles. The bridge hummed with quiet tension. Admiral Kepler stood at the center, hands clasped behind her back. Her voice cut through the silence. Remember why we fight. Not for glory. Not for conquest. For survival. For freedom. She paused, her eyes sweeping over her crew. They think they rule the stars. Today we show them otherwise. The crew answered with a single word, shouted as one. Valiant. The battle began with fire. Dominion cruisers surged forward, their cannons blazing. Energy beams lanced across the void, striking the Valiant's shields. The ship shook, alarms blared, but the shields held. Return fire, Kepler ordered. The Valiant's weapons roared to life. Rail cannons hurled slugs the size of buses, tearing through Dominion armor. Missiles streaked outward, weaving through enemy defenses before exploding in blossoms of fire. To the Dominion's shock, their front line staggered. Two cruisers split apart, their hulls shredded. A dreadnought's shields flickered, then collapsed. It was only the beginning. The Dominion had always relied on overwhelming numbers, on crushing their enemies quickly. But the Valiant refused to fall. Every time enemy fire struck, the ship rerouted power. Every time a weapon failed, another took its place. Damage crews worked like machines, sealing hull breaches, restoring systems, never pausing even as the battle raged around them. The Dominion commanders grew angry. They hurled wave after wave at the battleship, certain it must eventually break. But the Valiant fought like no ship they had ever seen. It was not just a machine, it was human determination forged into steel. Hours passed. The battlefield was littered with wreckage. Dominion cruisers burned, dreadnoughts drifted powerless, fighters fled in panic. And still the Valiant stood. Its armor was scarred, its shields weakened, but its engines blazed brighter than ever. On the bridge, Kepler's voice remained calm. Target their command ship. The crew obeyed. Weapons locked, power surged. A rail slug tore through the Dominion flagship's shields. A second shattered its engines. A third ripped through its core. The ship exploded, a starburst of fire. For the first time in living memory, a Dominion flagship had fallen. Silence spread across the enemy fleet. The Dominion, once unshakable, hesitated. Fear crept into their ranks, and in that silence the Valiant advanced. Its engines roared, carrying it straight into the heart of the fleet. It was outnumbered 100 to 1, yet it pressed forward, firing, striking, breaking the enemy line. The galaxy, watching from afar, witnessed something they had thought impossible. A single human battleship standing against the rulers of the stars, and winning. By the time the battle ended, the Valoran system was filled with drifting wrecks. The Dominion retreated, their banners torn, their pride shattered. The Valiant returned to human space, scarred but alive. Its name spread like wildfire. Across colonies, across allied outposts, across enslaved worlds, people whispered the story. The humans have a battleship. The humans defeated the Dominion. And with every retelling, the whispers grew louder. On Earth, celebrations broke out. For the first time, humanity believed survival was possible. For the first time, they believed victory could be more than a dream. But Admiral Kepler remained cautious. She stood alone on the Valiant's bridge, staring out at the stars. "This is only the beginning," she whispered, because she knew the Dominion would not forget. They would return, and the true war had only just begun. The galaxy trembled. News of the Valiant's victory at Valoran spread like wildfire, reaching every colony, every trade station, and every enslaved world. The humans had not just survived, they had defeated a Dominion flagship. They had shattered the illusion of invincibility. For the Dominion, it was a crisis unlike any they had faced. High Chancellor Vorak summoned the ruling council in the capital world's vast chamber. "How?" he demanded, his claws gripping the table. "How can one ship resist our fleets? How can one species defy us?" Silence followed. The councilors knew the truth. Humans were unlike any race the Dominion had ever conquered. They adapted. They innovated. They refused to bow. Vorak's voice dropped to a hiss. They cannot be allowed to continue. Gather every fleet. Leave nothing in reserve. The humans will fall, and they will fall completely. Across human space, the warning arrived just in time. Scouts detected Dominion ships moving faster than ever. Entire fleets converging on human systems. 5 armadas, thousands of vessels all pointed toward Earth. Admiral Kepler convened her council aboard the Valiant. Maps of incoming fleets flickered above them, each dot representing a dreadnought, a cruiser, or a carrier. "They outnumber us," said one officer, his voice tight. "Hundreds of ships, maybe more. If they reach Earth, we cannot stop them all." Kepler's gaze swept across her crew. "Then we fight smarter," she said. "Not with numbers, but with strategy, speed, and resolve. The galaxy already knows we will not surrender. Now we show them that we will not be crushed." The crew nodded, eyes hard with determination. Every fighter pilot, every engineer, every soldier knew that today could decide the future of humanity. The first clash occurred in the Farah Expanse, a region of dense asteroid fields and dangerous gravitational anomalies. Dominion dreadnoughts surged forward, expecting easy victory. Their weapons fired relentlessly, destroying smaller human ships that attempted to delay them. But the Valiant was ready. Kepler had studied the enemy tactics carefully. She knew that the Dominion relied on overwhelming numbers, rigid formations, and the expectation of surrender. Humanity would exploit their arrogance. "Engage the asteroids," she ordered. "Draw them into the field. Force them to fight where their numbers mean nothing." Human frigates and corvettes darted between massive rocks, weaving like fish in a storm. Dominion ships followed, confident they could crush the humans. Then the Valiant struck. Missiles launched from hidden turrets, striking vulnerable engines and weapon systems. Railguns fired from unexpected angles, ripping apart cruisers. Dominion formations broke apart, confusion spreading as their precision faltered. The Dominion fleet commander, Admiral Trelak, snarled. "Concentrate fire on the Valiant," he shouted. "Destroy it at all costs." But the Valiant was more than a single ship. It was a fortress, a symbol, and a trap. Its shields absorbed wave after wave of attacks, rerouting energy to weakened sections. Its engines flared unpredictably, moving the ship in patterns no Dominion captain had anticipated. Every time they thought they had a weakness, it disappeared. Every strike the Dominion launched was countered, avoided, or absorbed. On the bridge, Kepler watched the battlefield carefully. "Target their command ships," she said. "Do not waste time on the small fry." Hit their leadership, her crew obeyed. Rail cannons fired, missiles struck, and Dominion dreadnoughts began to burn. Smoke and fire filled space as massive explosions rocked the enemy lines. Elsewhere in the expanse, smaller human fleets carried out daring maneuvers. Frigates leapt through asteroid tunnels to hit supply convoys. Pilots risked collisions, extreme gravity, and enemy fire to disable fuel depots. Every small success delayed the Dominion further, giving the Valiant time to engage the larger forces. The Dominion expected fear, but humanity fought with determination. They did not retreat, they did not panic, and they did not surrender. Their movements were unpredictable, their courage unshakable, and their unity unbreakable. Across the galaxy, other species watched. Those who had lived under Dominion rule for centuries began whispering, "If the humans can resist, maybe we can too." Hours passed. The battle spread across 3 star systems. Dominion dreadnoughts exploded in firestorms. Human frigates and corvettes vanished into asteroid belts and gravitational anomalies, only to strike again with devastating effect. The Valiant became the heart of the fight, moving through enemy lines like a titan. Every strike it delivered shattered the enemy's confidence. Every dodge it executed defied expectation. Admiral Trelak realized something terrifying. This was not just a ship. This was an idea, a symbol of human ingenuity, resilience, and courage. On board the Valiant, tension was high. Engineers worked tirelessly, sealing breaches, restoring energy, and recalibrating weapons. Pilots braced in their cockpits, hearts pounding as they prepared for another wave. Soldiers readied boarding craft in case the Dominion tried direct attacks. Kepler remained calm. She had made the hardest decisions already. Lives would be lost. Ships would fall. But the fleet, the crew, and the Valiant itself were all focused on one goal: survival and victory. "Hold your positions," she said. "Remember who we fight for. Remember why we are here." Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the bridge like fire. The crew responded with steady determination. They had faced impossible odds before, and they would face them again. The turning point came near the Storym belt, a massive field of dying stars and volatile gas clouds. Dominion dreadnoughts advanced, confident that the humans would break under the pressure. But Kepler had set a trap. The Valiant maneuvered into a narrow pass between two gas giants. Dominion ships followed, unaware of the energy mines, gravity traps, and hidden human fleets waiting within. Then the attack began. Energy mines detonated, disabling engines and weapons. Railguns fired from hidden positions, tearing through unshielded sections. Human fighters swarmed from the shadows, striking where the Dominion was weakest. Chaos reigned. Dominion fleets faltered, unable to maintain formations. Confusion spread as leaders struggled to issue commands. Amid the chaos, the Valiant focused on the Dominion Command Dreadnought, its massive guns calibrated for precision. "Target acquired," said the weapons officer. Kepler gave the order, "Fire everything." The Valiant's guns unleashed a storm of destruction. Energy beams cut through shields. Missiles ripped apart hulls. The Command Dreadnought exploded in a spectacular fireball, its destruction shaking the nearby fleet. With the command ship gone, Dominion coordination collapsed. Ships collided, formations broke apart, and retreat became inevitable. By the time the battle ended, the Valiant had faced hundreds of enemy ships, and countless human pilots and soldiers had fought bravely. The Dominion had suffered devastating losses. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, carriers, all either destroyed or heavily damaged. The humans had won, but the cost was heavy. The Valiant itself bore scars from countless hits. Fires burned in sections and hull plates were torn. Pilots and crew were exhausted, yet their spirits remained unbroken. Across human space, news of the victory spread. Colonies erupted in celebration. Survivors cheered, cried, and shared the story of the battle that would become legend. The Dominion, once unchallenged, had tasted defeat on a scale they had never imagined. Back aboard the Valiant, Admiral Kepler looked out at the stars. "We survived," she said quietly. "We have shown the galaxy that we will not fall." Her crew nodded, but she knew the truth. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The Dominion would rebuild, regroup, and return stronger than ever. Still, humanity had proven something vital. Even against overwhelming odds, courage, ingenuity, and unity could triumph. And in that triumph lay hope, not just for humans, but for every oppressed species across the galaxy. The stars were no longer simply ruled by fear. They were now open to those who refused to bow. The Valiant had shattered the Dominion's reign, and the galaxy would never forget it. The galaxy had changed. The Dominion, once untouchable and unchallenged, had been shaken to its core. The Valiant's victory at the Storym belt was more than a battle. It was a statement. Humanity refused to bow. Humanity refused to surrender. Across the stars, enslaved species whispered of rebellion. Traders and smugglers carried news of human courage to distant worlds. Colonists in remote systems dared to rise against Dominion governors, inspired by the impossible, the fall of dreadnoughts that had once seemed invincible. On Earth, celebrations were tempered with vigilance. Admiral Kepler stood aboard the Valiant, watching the galaxy through the ship's observation dome. The battle had been won, but she knew the Dominion would not accept defeat quietly. "We have survived," she said quietly, almost to herself. "But the war is not over." Her officers nodded. Every crew member understood the weight of her words. Humanity had struck the first blow, but the Dominion had numbers, firepower, and centuries of experience. The coming years would demand everything they had. The first priority was consolidation. Human colonies sent fleets to repair damage, rebuild infrastructure, and evacuate civilians from threatened worlds. Engineers worked around the clock to repair starports and weapons facilities. Pilots trained in new tactics, learning from the successes of the Storym belt battle. At the same time, humanity reached out diplomatically. Neutral species, previously terrified of Dominion wrath, began to communicate openly with Earth. Traders, scientists, and former slaves offered intelligence, resources, and technology. Humanity was no longer a single planet. It was the center of a growing coalition. Admiral Kepler oversaw every operation personally. She knew the galaxy watched humanity now. Every decision mattered. Every victory would inspire hope, and every failure would be exploited by the Dominion. In the Dominion's capital, High Chancellor Vorax seethed. Reports of the Soren Belt disaster filled his council chamber. Entire fleets destroyed, command dreadnoughts shattered, and human colonies surviving against impossible odds. We underestimated them, a counselor admitted. They are different, Vorax's claws clenched. Different, he spat. They are still one species, one small species, yet they have struck us in ways we cannot predict. They fight with courage, cunning, and chaos. That is unacceptable. The council debated strategies for weeks. Dominion fleets would be rebuilt, but the damage to morale was severe. The myth of invincibility was broken, and in its place a single truth emerged. Humans could no longer be ignored. Back in human space, the Valiant led patrols across key sectors. Every encounter with Dominion forces became a lesson. Every skirmish a test of human ingenuity. Fleets adapted quickly. They studied Dominion tactics, predicted their moves, and responded with bold maneuvers. One notable mission involved liberating a colony on Zira Prime, a mining world deep in Dominion-controlled space. Dominion garrisons were well fortified and supplies were limited. Yet human fleets attacked with precision, avoiding unnecessary risks, and struck at key command centers. Within hours, the Dominion troops were overwhelmed. Civilians were freed. Zira Prime became a symbol of hope, a proof that the Dominion could be challenged and that humans were capable of more than survival. Word of human victories spread like wildfire. Across enslaved worlds, oppressed species dared to rise. Workers sabotaged Dominion facilities. Smugglers smuggled weapons to rebellion cells. Colonies coordinated with each other secretly, sharing intelligence and resources. The humans did not force rebellion, they inspired it. They had shown that the impossible was possible, that courage could match strength, and that hope could flourish even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. The Dominion began to feel the ripple effects of these uprisings. Their supply lines were disrupted, their fleets delayed, and their morale weakened. The galaxy's once feared rulers were no longer seen as gods. They were mortal, vulnerable, and challenged. On board the Valiant, Admiral Kepler reflected on these changes. Humanity was no longer just defending its own worlds. They were a beacon for all those who had lived under Dominion rule. "We have the chance to reshape the galaxy," she said to her senior officers. "Not just survive, but lead. We must act wisely, with courage, and with honor. Our victories are meaningless if we do not use them to build something better." Her officers agreed. Plans were drawn to assist liberated worlds, to protect vulnerable colonies, and to coordinate with other species willing to resist the Dominion. Humanity was becoming more than a survivor. It was becoming a force capable of shaping the future of the galaxy. The Dominion, furious at their losses, launched counterattacks. Fleets larger than any before attempted to retake lost systems. Yet each attack was met with careful strategy. Human fleets used hit-and-run tactics, coordinated ambushes, and the unique capabilities of the Valiant to turn each battle into a lesson for the enemy. In one decisive encounter near the Orion Rift, human engineers had modified the Valiant to use the region's gravitational anomalies to their advantage. Dominion dreadnoughts, unprepared for the unpredictable maneuvers, collided or were forced into energy mines. Entire fleets were scattered before they could strike. Victory after victory reinforced the humans' growing reputation. It was no longer a single battleship fighting alone. It was a symbol, a movement, and a promise. Humanity also began developing alliances. Species that had long suffered under the Dominion's rule offered fleets, technology, and intelligence. Humans shared knowledge generously, knowing that survival required cooperation. Colonies once isolated by fear and distance now communicated and acted together. By now, the Valiant was more than a ship. It was a fleet leader, a mobile command center, and a symbol of defiance. Its presence inspired confidence, encouraged rebellion, and forced the Dominion to rethink every strategy they had relied on for centuries. The turning point came when Dominion forces attempted a massive assault on Earth itself. They believed that striking the homeworld would break humanity's resolve. Fleet after fleet approached, confident in their superiority, but the humans were ready. Every colony had prepared defenses. Every fleet knew its role, and the Valiant was positioned to strike decisively. When the Dominion entered orbit, human fleets sprang from hidden stations, asteroid belts, and warp jumps. The Valiant led the charge, moving with precision and strategy that no Dominion commander could anticipate. The resulting battle was catastrophic for the Dominion. Ships were destroyed or captured, supply lines severed, and morale shattered. Earth remained untouched, and humanity's power was undeniable. After the battle, the galaxy recognized a new truth. Humanity was no longer a minor species. They had faced overwhelming odds and survived. They had confronted the most powerful empire in the galaxy and won. Other species, inspired by humans, began to rise. Revolts spread across Dominion-controlled sectors. Humanity offered support, intelligence, and protection, allowing oppressed worlds to reclaim their freedom. The Valiant became a legend, its name synonymous with courage, ingenuity, and defiance. In the aftermath, Admiral Kepler stood on the bridge looking out at the stars. The galaxy was changing. The Dominion was weakened, other species were rising, and humanity was no longer just a survivor. It was a beacon of hope. "The stars are ours to reach," she whispered. "Not to conquer, but to protect. Not to rule, but to inspire." Her crew looked to her, understanding the weight of her words. Humanity had proven it could face the greatest power in the galaxy and survive. But now it had the chance to lead, to unite, and to create a future where courage, freedom, and determination mattered more than fear or domination. The Dominion would rebuild, and threats would continue to emerge. But humanity had shown the galaxy that even the smallest, most underestimated species could rise to greatness. One battleship, one crew, one species had changed the course of history, and across the stars, whispers of hope became roars. The humans had survived. The humans had fought, and the humans would shape the galaxy for generations to come.